What's up guys, welcome to my analysis of the new Destiny gameplay trailer titled The Moon. I definitely enjoyed this trailer. It gave us some insight as to what we can expect on the moon in Destiny, which is apparently the first place we'll go to start recovering what humanity lost from the Golden Age. After Earth, of course. The trailer also showed off some of the most awesome visuals we've seen so far, in my opinion anyways. So I'm excited to take a close scene-by-scene look at the entire thing and see what I can point out. Let's get started.
We once looked to the stars and saw hope, but they saw us.
The trailer opens with this gorgeous panning shot from the tower, looking up at the moon as it rises above the traveler. There are a couple of extremely interesting things about the moon here. If you look closely, there's something on the upper left side of the moon. Now at first, I thought this was just a plume of gas or dust, but RowmanSailor here on YouTube pointed out that it looks rather like a structure. Here's a side-by-side image comparing the moon as we see in the trailer to a version he darkened to cut through the effects. The resolution is obviously very poor, but it does seem like this could be a structure. We do know that the Hellmouth is just one of many locations on the moon. My other thought was that it's pieces of the moon, since we know some areas of the moon have been damaged and sort of broken, and I think it could be that. But if you look closely, it does look as if there's giant struts or supports going down to the moon's surface, which would of course indicate it is a structure. Also, it seems like this structure sort of peeks over the horizon from the dark side of the moon, which just further adds to the mystery. I'm curious what kind of structure this would be though. Something like a giant communications device comes to mind, although I'm not sure if the Hive would utilize that. Let me know in the comments what you think this structure might be, or if you don't think it is a structure, then what is it? I'd like to see everyone's ideas. The other very interesting thing that Roman pointed out was that the moon seems to have been rotated about 135 degrees, compared to its orientation today, as demonstrated by this image here. You can see that the craters line up very well once our current day moon is rotated to that amount. So much has changed in our solar system in Destiny's time that it's difficult to draw any real speculation, although I'd say there's a good chance it has something to do with the moon being damaged, like we see in this concept art. A big thank you to RowmanSailor for pointing this out to me. You can check it out more on the Destiny Wiki's moon page over at destiny.gamepedia.com. I'll leave a link below. Now moving on with this shot, as the camera pans down, the view opens up to show a beautiful angle of the city lit up at night. We also see this Guardian on the right, a Titan more specifically by the looks of it. Note that he isn't wearing his helmet, further reinforcing what I said back at E3, which is that I think we'll have the option to remove our helmet in non-combat social areas, like the tower and city. I'm sure that would also mean we can customize our characters' faces, just like in most MMOs and RPGs. Another thing worth noting about this shot is how the lights grow much more intense towards the middle of the city, right beneath the Traveler. We know that the city is divided into districts, so those central ones are obviously the most active, with larger buildings and likely many more activities. Before we move on, just for comparison's sake, here's a very similar shot of the city, but at sunset or sunrise. Please ignore the branding and relative low quality, this is an old image. But as you can see, it does seem that the buildings on the outer edge here are much lower end, with much bigger, fancier places right beneath the Traveler. Now whether you look at the city at night or during daylight, it looks quite beautiful. I can't wait to see it personally in-game. Next is another really gorgeous shot, this time looking into space from the moon. Something of interest here is this object flying overhead, which I believe is a satellite. At first I thought it flapped its wings, thus making it a bird. And before you say that's a crazy thought since they're on the moon, remember that the Traveler sowed its magic all across our solar system, changing everything. But anyways, if you slow it way down, you can see that's not the case. It's just something to do with the lighting. As it passes this bright area, the wings or solar panels fade out. Also, if you zoom way in, you can see it looks very angular, like a satellite. Now continuing with the shot, the only other thing here is very obvious, Earth, looking very nice off the horizon. This next shot continues from that one, still showing Earth in the distance, although from a different angle. But the interesting part of this scene is of course the astronaut, or the mess of bones encased in an old suit that once was an astronaut. He obviously met an unfortunate end while exploring the moon, likely centuries before the current day in the Destiny universe. The one big thing to point out in this scene is this large moon rover type thing his remains are leaning against. Surprisingly, I myself didn't notice that until I had watched it a couple of times. We can see a large metal piece on the front, or it could be the back I guess, hard to say, and these large wheels with what looks like big teeth to grip into the moon rock as it drives. It definitely looks cool. After that, we get some flashing shots of the moon's surface, and then the gaping Hellmouth dug into it. Looking closely at the moon's surface, it seems pretty standard. That gray look, some craters and rock, the usual. But it also seems to have some tracks, which I would guess are from a vehicle. Multiple vehicles of the same type, actually. What type of vehicle that is, I can't say for sure, but the pike comes to mind. It has these two fins or blades on the bottom, which look like they may stir up the ground as it goes. I would think it might make a trail like that. We also saw these in use on the moon in the CGI Law of the Jungle trailer, so we know that they are used here. Also, the pike is actually a fallen vehicle in case you're wondering. Going on with this scene a bit, here's the first real clear look at the Hellmouth, which appears to be a giant hole going deep into the moon, with this sort of gas escaping from it. A quote from Sam Jones, lead environment artist, says, "The Hellmouth has one function only, to ask of the player what lies within." So its design is meant to really get us curious and wondering what's inside, and it seems to be working for me. Off to the right, this interesting part which sticks up is known as the gatehouse, and is the entrance to this Hive fortress. We'll get a look at that more closely later. The other thing here is this little overhang bit with a path going to the edge. At first I thought this was just for looking into the Hellmouth, but now I'm wondering if it might have been used for throwing people in or something, I don't know. But it looks cool. As the shot finishes its pan, we get another look at Earth and that little satellite thing. Moving on, we have the Destiny logo along with the moon. After that, there's this shot we saw back at E3, and then it transitions to this beautiful space cutscene. The visuals all look amazing. The space background, the ship itself, and I know some people may not like them, but I think the lens flares look awesome. Now, as I said, I'm quite sure this is a cutscene. This does not mean that we can fly our ships manually, although I of course hope we can. On to the next scene, we have an awesome looking hunter with his cape. The one thing of real interest in this scene is this floating object with a strange purple force in it. At very first glance, I thought maybe it was the character's ghost, but it's far too large for that. It's also not the right shape, and it seems to be staying in one spot towards where the enemies are. One guess I have is that it could possibly be some kind of deployable sentry turret or defensive unit, although I suppose it could be just a fancy light. I really don't know what it might be. But we have actually seen this same thing before in the second Destiny Vidoc. Now here is basically the same scene zoomed in, but the purple floating thing isn't there. As you can see though, we have our 3 Guardian Fireteam approaching the fortress, Hunter on the left, Warlock in the middle, and Titan on the right. Something to note is that this entrance is actually at the side of the gatehouse I mentioned earlier. If we could pan to the left a little, you'd see the Hellmouth right there. This next shot is looking over the Warlock's shoulder. We get a brief glimpse of the gun he's carrying, which looks rather intriguing. It seems to me like it has some creature's spine attached to the stock. It's pretty mean looking. I'd love to see it from a better angle. Unfortunately, I don't see this weapon anywhere else in the trailer. Here we see the Warlock throwing a solar flare at the Hive. I believe that Warlock is now carrying a customized fusion rifle with yellow or gold paint matching his cloak. And then if you look at the ground, you'll see a large pile of bones. This is a major theme throughout the fortress, and I'll continue to point it out as we go through, but I think it likely indicates how many people have been here before us and failed. At the end, we get another demonstration of the slide maneuver. Also on the side of his gun, we can see it says Assault 2, which we'll see again on the weapon's sight in a bit. Now this next shot is pretty cool. We get a good look at one of the Hive's guns. You can see it shoots a rather large projectile and it shoots it vertically. It then spins through the air as it goes while propelling itself by the looks of it. It seems to have a little power source within, leaving a rocket-type trail behind it. It's quite unique and looks pretty cool. Then his buddy steps forward and we get a good clear look at these guys. They seem to be a variation of the Hive Knight, as they look very similar to the confirmed Hive Knight that we'll see in a bit. Now if we look at some of his armor, mainly the arms and legs, it looks as if it's made from bone, like they just repurposed the corpses of their victims. Also you can see it's held in with big spikes going through the arms, pinning it to them. The leg and shoulder pieces seem to be the same. Speaking of shoulders, and the helmet too actually, they're obviously made with a different material, although I personally think it looks kind of organic as well. Perhaps it's like Cabal skin or something. I have no idea. Then there's this shot of the hunter firing his rifle. Not a huge amount to add here, although he's wearing some pretty cool gear. Also on his visor piece, there's a little Dead Orbit logo printed on there, so he's done a bit of customizing to show his faction allegiance, which is really cool. I believe that's the first time we've seen a faction logo on the player's gear. We've seen them on guns and on a player's ship, but not the player itself. Now here's a first person aiming down the sight's view. You can see his rifle has a holographic sight, possibly added by the player. As I mentioned before, the sight also has Assault 2 stamped on it, just like the rifle itself. And then closer to the player, we also see FOTC on there. If you don't remember, FOTC is the Forces of the City. None of that is particularly important, but it's kinda nice. After that is this cool looking shot of them entering a doorway. I believe we actually saw this doorway back in the last Fidoc. Now since we're looking at these characters from the back, it's a good chance to point out the weapons they're all carrying. The Hunter has a hand cannon, which I think is an awesome gun called the Last Word, but we'll see that again in a bit. The Titan has the Duke Mark 44 hand cannon, and the Warlock has a shotgun, likely the Silver Dollar Mark 35. A couple things about all of this. One, those hand cannons are massive, and two, they're positioned differently on the different characters. The theories I have are, it could be a weapon-specific thing, like each weapon mounts a certain way. It could be a class-specific thing, each class mounts their weapons differently, or my personal favorite, a player customization, something we can choose. Now those two guns are both hand cannons obviously, so I think that crosses out it being weapon specific. I don't think two different models of the same type of gun would have a different mounting preset, which leaves class specific or player choice. Seeing as they always stress that Destiny is about you, building your character, becoming legend, and that they always say that there's a ton of customization, I definitely think that player choice is the most likely option, which seems really cool to me. On to the next shot. Here's the same scene, but from inside the door. You may notice that large chain in the background. We'll see that again in a bit. Also, those blue horn things sticking up from the Titan's helmet, those are quite interesting as well, but we'll get a closer look at them later. Moving on, here's a Hive Knight, armed with a large sword. Now this is a confirmed Hive Knight. The ones from earlier are speculated to be a variation of them, but these guys are the real deal. You can see they definitely look tougher and more armored than the others. He then uses that signature Hive melee attack on the Warlock. The sword glows green and he does this sort of power swipe. Also on the wall behind them, we can see a red banner with the Hive symbol. This is actually engraved around the fortress quite a bit, but I'm not going to point all of them out, it's not that important. Continuing on, here's a close top-down view of the gatehouse and the edge of the Hellmouth. We can see a couple of guardians down in there. I sort of get the feeling that this has a lot of levels that we'll have to slowly make our way through. On to the next scene, we have our Fireteam walking through a hallway. Not much to add here, unless you missed the bones. Yeah, there's a lot of bones here. This whole hallway is just filled with piles of them going all the way back. This next shot shows it from a top-down perspective as well. That's a lot of dead people. It's pretty easy to see why the city classified the moon as a forbidden zone. Next up here, we have the Fireteam walking through a dark tunnel. The Hunter is accompanied by his ghost, lighting the way. The Titan also has her little mysterious horns glowing, as well as something over her shoulder. I'm not sure if that's her ghost or something else. If that is a ghost, it must be in a different mode or something. Behind them you can see that dark smoky stuff. We've seen it before on the moon. I'm guessing it must have to do with the Hive. Now the shot transitions to first person, but before the transition is even fully complete, we get a glimpse of the Warlock's helmet. As you can see, it appears to have been made with the bone of some enemy or creature. You can't get a very good view of it from here, but Bungie actually released a bunch of high-resolution screenshots at the time of the trailer. They showed this helmet and a whole bunch more in better detail, so make sure to watch through until the end where I'll break those images down as well. Anyways, in this scene we can also see the Warlock's ghost, in more detail than the Hunter's. It's interesting to note that the ghost isn't opened up like we saw it back at E3. This one seems to be staying sealed. I'm guessing that might have something to do with the area you're in, or what the ghost is currently doing, but I'm not sure. Also, now that we're in first person, it seems like this Guardian may be using some kind of light enhancing vision, because it looks far more washed out and gray than the shot we just saw. I suppose it's also possible that this ghost is sending out more of a white light compared to the purple light of the Hunter's ghost. And actually, if that is the case, I think that would mean we could change the color of our ghost's light, which would be pretty cool. Moving on, we have a firefight going on here with the Hive. Nothing I can really add to this first shot, except perhaps those shimmering white balls of energy flying towards them. I believe that's an attack from the other more powerful class of Hive, currently called the Hive Queen by a lot of people, although I personally don't feel that's too accurate, but we'll get a better look at that in a bit. Now here we have a Hive Thrall using a melee attack on this Titan. We also get a good look at the Duke Mark 44 on her back, looking cool. Her decorative little mini cape looks pretty sweet as well. The cape also has some symbols and even text on it, but unfortunately I can't make anything out, and even if I could see it clearly, it looks like a different language to me. The last thing there is as she steps back, we get a clearer look at this object sticking up over her shoulder. I really have no idea what this is. Its edge almost looks sharpened, indicating that it's some type of blade, but at the same time, it doesn't really look easily detachable. Perhaps it's for mounting something? I'm just not sure. Then we have this front-facing close-up of the Titan using her hand cannon. Those blue magical horns are quite visible, but no less mysterious. My guess is that it's some sort of cosmetic customization we can get for our characters. Perhaps some odd implant that channels this space magic up through your head or something. It also seems somewhat possible that this could be an Awoken thing. Perhaps when creating your character, if you choose Awoken as your race, you'd have the option for these as a facial trait, because the Awoken are a more mysterious and magical race. Of course, we know almost nothing about them as of yet. Anyways, the horns are quite interesting and pretty cool looking. We'll also get another look at them in the screenshots at the end. There's not much else to add in this shot, except for more bones, lots of bones, and look, more bones, also a Hive Thrall. After that, this Warlock is like, nope, I've had enough, and fires off a Nova Bomb. Next, we see a clear first-person view of a grenade for the first time. Luckily for this Thrall, he goes in for the lunge at just the right moment, dodging the grenade. And we see it starting to detonate behind him, just before the Thrall blocks our view and the scene cuts. Moving on, here's another firefight in a more close quarters environment. In the middle of the room, we can see these two large chains, the same thing I pointed out earlier. Bungie has said that the chain continues deep into the fortress, down into the dark dungeons below. They made it a continuous part of the structure, as in these chains go all the way through the fortress on one continuous path. We see it going through as we explore, and it's always the same chain, if that made sense. A couple other things. He's carrying a pretty cool looking assault rifle with an interesting band on the barrel. We'll get a better look at that later. And then there's these sword racks holding those heavy Hive Knight blades. It would be pretty cool if we could pick those blades up and use them, although it kinda seems unlikely in a way. Then the Titan uses Fist of Havoc, and right before hitting the ground, the scene switches to the Titan doing the same move in a different room. Before she hits, we get a good view of this Hive from the back. This is the type from back at the beginning, speculated to be a variation of the Hive Knight, so we get another look at the pinned on bone armor before it's vaporized. Continuing, here's another room with the same massive chain, this one filled with Hive Thralls, and a couple of Knights at the back. As we saw before in the latest vidoc, the Thralls have this ability where their head glows with this interesting effect. We don't know what this does, although my first guess is something like a self-destruct or suicide attack. Next, we have the Hunter and Warlock defending against a horde of Hive. Behind them is that big door from earlier, or possibly a different one somewhere else in the fortress. The scene cuts to the opposite angle, revealing the same room we saw earlier with those sword racks, except now we have a Hive Knight coming at them. It then cuts to first person on the Hunter, and we get a close-up of the Knight's attack. It seems like it's probably best to get rid of them at mid-range, not letting them get close enough to use their sword. On to the next scene, we have another one of those Hive with the pinned on armor doing a little battle screech, and then we see the Hunter powering up the Golden Gun ability. This is probably one of the same rooms we've already seen, but we get a bit more of a view this time. We can see another room off to the right, and there's this interesting ring-like support up around the chain structure. By looking at this, you kind of get an idea of how at least part of this will play out. It looks like many levels going deeper and deeper, with this chain going through all of them. They all seem to look somewhat similar, with different paths and such that we'll have to explore to get from level to level. It kinda reminds me of the library in Halo. Not in looks, but in the way it'll play out, at least if my theory is correct. Also, right before the scene fades, we can see another room coming off of this one, with a knight at the entrance. After that, we get another look at this mysterious floating Hive unit, the one referred to as the Hive Queen by some, but like I said in another analysis, I feel that it died too easily for it to be a true queen. In my opinion, it's some high-class mini-boss type of unit, and it definitely specializes in mystical powers as we can see. Here's a close-up of the creature's face and hands. It's not too pretty, although I like the little swirly decorations carved into its armor by the neck. In this next scene, we've got quite a bit going on. There's a number of Hive knights in the room. Something very interesting to note about these knights though, is that they aren't carrying the massive sword. Instead, they're carrying some sort of gun. It looks quite big too, probably pretty deadly. So anyways, the warlock is throwing off a Nova Bomb on the right there. In the middle, we can see a grenade ready to detonate. And then on the left side, there's a little round, shimmering blue object stuck to the knight's knee. I'm not sure what it is, but it certainly reminds me of a plasma grenade from Halo. For those unfamiliar, that's a blue, glowing alien grenade that sticks to people it hits, some objects as well, such as vehicles. Anyways, first the Nova Bomb hits, big purple explosion ensues. Then right after that, the grenade, causing a nice conventional yellow explosion. Unfortunately though, the scene cuts to a similar explosion before we can see what it is that the blue sticking thing does. Now in the middle of all that, the Titan went in for a Fist of Havoc, which finished right around when the grenade detonated. So that just added to the carnage. Now when the scene cut, we went straight from one explosion to another, probably from the same grenade type I'd guess, and this one is also followed by a Nova Bomb. The really cool thing to note here though is this hand cannon. I believe it's the Last Word, said to be a hero's weapon, with a sandalwood grip, gold inlay, and more. It's the exact opposite of Thorn. Both are exotic hand cannons, but one is dark and menacing, and the other is bright and beautiful. As he turns it to drop out the drum, you can see a bit of the gold inlay and designs. Even the drum looks awesome in my opinion, but we'll get a better look at this gun in those screenshots at the end. Moving forward, here's the Hunter coming in for an epic slide attack on this Hive thrall. Then the Titan using Fist of Havoc on that mysterious floating Hive creature. Meanwhile, the Hunter is using Golden Gun. And then after that, we have the awesome ending sequence with the Fireteam entering Phogoth's holding area. We saw Phogoth before in the Vidoc. He seems to be the boss of this area, or at least one of the bosses. As you can see, he's kept in this deep dungeon type thing. If you look around, it's clear that this is a cave, likely dug out deep into the moon. There's also some light coming from one side. Unfortunately, the trailer doesn't show us a clear view of that side, but we actually have some old footage of this, coming from way back in the Destiny PS4 trailer. We can see that some changes have been made. Phogoth and the environment do look different, but I'm confident that it's the same place, just early on before it was complete. Now, as we play through this old footage, the camera flies past Phogoth, giving us a clear view of the area behind. As you can see, this is quite a massive cavern. It looks pretty cool. But again, even if I'm correct, and this is the same area we see in the trailer, they have of course made changes. It may not look quite like this, it may not be as large, we just don't know. Right off the bat, I did notice that the light source here is a long crack or opening to this cavern, but in the new Moon trailer, it looks more like a rounded opening. Also in the new trailer, the opening seems closer than it does in the old trailer, leading me to think that this cavern won't be quite as big now. But it's very difficult to say without a clear picture. Anyways, back to Phogoth. We can see he's kept down here in this dungeon kind of place, bound in chains. That is, until we show up and he breaks them. Now, we don't know a lot about Phogoth. Basically, he's a very large Hive boss, or mini-boss, and he can shoot a beam of energy from his messed up head. That's about it. Speaking of his head, here's a close-up. It's pretty ugly. And then in this shot, you get a size comparison. Phogoth on the right and the Titan on the left. This is probably a camera trick though. Phogoth is huge, but I don't think he's quite that huge. After that, we see the Hunter activating his Golden Gun ability. And then here's the beam of energy coming from Phogoth's head. We'll see that again in the screenshots. Then Phogoth roars, and finally, the Hunter fires a shot from his awesome flaming gun. Then the scene cuts, ending the trailer. There are of course two very important pieces of information at the end here. We'll take a look at them before the screenshots. First, we get our normal Destiny logo, but there's a difference. This one adds, Become Legend, Spring 2014. I've of course covered this already, but we now have an official release window for Destiny, Spring 2014. Now spring begins on March 20th and ends June 20th. So Destiny could be released in March, April, May, or June, any of those months. I personally don't think they'd release in June though, as that's getting into all the big events and everything. I don't think it'd feel right. And I kinda doubt they'd be releasing in March. Seems too early. Especially with the beta coming first, which we'll get to next. So my speculation is that it will release in April or May. If not, then maybe June, if they needed the extra time to finish the game, but I don't think they'd normally choose June. It'll be interesting to see if I'm correct with those months. Anyways, after the spring 2014, it says pre-order for beta access. So you'll get access to the Destiny beta in early 2014 if you pre-order the game from a participating retailer. I covered all the details on this in a recent video you can find on my channel. Now of course, that's all very exciting news because it means that the number of months before we can play Destiny ourselves and have it up on our screens can now be gauged to an extent. It's definitely coming along and I'm getting more and more excited with each bit of news. Now with all that out of the way, let's take a look at the screenshots I mentioned earlier. Here we have the Fireteam up on some cliff above the Hellmouth. We can see a bunch of things here in better detail. First, the Titan's magical horns, which again, we don't know what they are, but I'm guessing it's a cosmetic customization option we can do, or my other guess that it's a facial trait of the Awoken. Not sure if that'd happen or not though. Then we have the Titan's rifle. I'm not sure what kind of rifle this is, or if it's exotic or standard, but it looks pretty cool, and it has that really interesting band around the barrel. There's also something underneath the barrel where the Titan's hand is. I'm guessing that could be a grenade launcher. Then going over to the hunter on the left, we get a much clearer look at his hand cannon, the last word, or at least I'm pretty sure that's what it is. Definitely an awesome looking gun, something I'd really like to get for myself in game. And finally, the warlock on the right, we get a better look at his bone helmet, which looks pretty cool with those little horns on the front. We also get a look at his shotgun, which is badass. It looks a lot like the silver dollar, but perhaps with some customizations. The next image is basically the same thing, but in a different pattern. We have an even closer look at the last word. Although the angles and lighting change the color a bit, it still looks quite awesome. One new thing I noticed here though is this device with a little tube going around his waist. I'm not sure what that might be, it's probably just aesthetic though. Now with the warlock we get a different angle of his bone helmet, which reveals these smaller horns or spikes behind the main ones. We also see his awesome purple assault rifle. For the Titan we don't really get anything new, but it's still cool. Moving forward, here's a nice shot of a Hive thrall, then this Hive, expected to be a knight variant, and then we get a good look at Phogoth's energy beam, which he shoots from his head. After that we see Phogoth chained up, then a Hive thrall meleeing the warlock. Another Hive can be seen up on top, way in the back. I'm guessing it's a knight, but I'm not 100% sure. Continuing on, we have the Hellmouth. Right here is that little path looking over the Hellmouth. Across the way we have the gatehouse. Then there's these three window kind of things. Here, here, and here. All of which seem to look into the fortress, or if we're inside then they look out obviously. It all looks quite cool. Next we have the Hellmouth from a different angle. We obviously have the sun in this one, which is the first time we've seen the sun from the moon, I believe. But then we have this smoke or dust coming from under those massive rock pieces. Since it's rising and looks black on the top, I'm gonna guess it's smoke rather than dust, which makes me wonder what's on fire over there. If I was seeing this in-game, I'd definitely want to go explore it and see what was happening, which I think is what they're going for in Destiny. The last screenshot is of that entrance to the gatehouse that we saw in the beginning, from a slightly different angle. One thing here, I believe this object is the purple floating thing we saw in the beginning, but I think it's closed up since it hasn't detected the players yet, which makes me think it's even more likely to be a sentry turret or something defensive. But that's all for the screenshots, which means we've reached the end of this analysis. Quick note, any of those screenshots can be downloaded in high resolution and used for wallpapers if you'd like. I'll leave a link to that below. So anyways, I really hope you enjoyed this video and I pointed some things out you may have missed. I put quite a lot of work into it, as usual with these analyses. If you did like the video, clicking that like button helps me out a lot and I'd really appreciate it. My last big analysis got over 2,000 likes, which is really awesome. While I don't expect this one to go that high, if it could get over 1,000 likes, I'd be happy. Also, remember to let me know in the comments what you think about that possible structure on the moon. I'd like to see your ideas. One last thing before I go, you may have noticed that my little intro sound at the very beginning was different this time. Let me know what you think about the new one. I'll probably switch on and off between it and my old one. Also, make sure to check out the guy who made it for me. A link is in the description. He does covers of a lot of awesome songs on his channel, including Destiny, as well as some original music. But with all of that, I just want to say thank you very much for watching. As always, your support really means a lot. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next update.